The high-income trap is real, it is silent, and right now it is quietly draining people who earn more than they ever dreamed they would. This video will show you exactly how the warrior mind turns raw income into permanent, unshakable prosperity. And at the very end, one final principle will completely reframe how you see your own financial life. Most people earning good salaries believe the hard part is over. They negotiated the raise. They landed the contract. They hit the number they swore would change everything. And then, somehow, the account never grows. The stress never shrinks. The months still feel tight by the 28th day. Here is the diagnosis. Income is not wealth. Income is just speed. And speed without direction sends you off a cliff faster than poverty ever could. The samurai understood this distinction at a cellular level. A warrior who spent every resource on the last battle had nothing left for the war. The principle was not how much you earned in a single campaign. The principle was always what survived it. That survival, that cold, disciplined art of keeping, is what separates a warrior who wins one battle from a commander who wins the entire war. Picture this. You wake up, the salary has doubled from 3 years ago, and you feel poorer than you did back then. Not metaphorically poorer. Actually, materially, measurably poorer in terms of what remains after the month ends. This is not a personal failure. It is a structural trap. It has a name. The Roman statesman Cyril Northcote Parkinson identified it in the 20th century. But the samurai warrior encountered the same force on the battlefield nearly 1,000 years earlier. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Spending expands to fill the income available for its consumption. That is Parkinson's law applied to personal finance, and it is surgical in its precision. The moment your resources grow, your lifestyle quietly expands to absorb them. Not all at once, but slowly. One subscription, one upgrade, one restaurant that used to feel like a treat and now just feels like Tuesday. Then a Tuesday routine becomes a Wednesday habit, and a Wednesday habit becomes a fixed monthly cost you no longer question. The daimyo, the feudal lords of Japan, faced this exact mechanism at the peak of their power. When a daimyo conquered new territory, the territory immediately demanded new costs: roads to maintain, armies to station, officials to pay, enemies to manage. The expansion itself created the financial drain, because territory without administration is just a liability wearing a crown. The daimyo who conquered the most land was not automatically the wealthiest. He was often the most exposed, stretched thin across obligations that grew faster than his treasury could absorb them. Expansion without a corresponding defense system was not victory. It was slow collapse dressed in silk. Stop for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, when your income grew last, did your savings rate grow with it? Or did the lifestyle simply upgrade and reset the pressure to exactly where it was before? Here is what most people miss. The problem is not spending on things you love. The problem is spending on things that spend you back. The car that requires premium fuel, the house with the maintenance bill that arrives before the mortgage does, the image that demands constant feeding. These are not rewards. They are obligations in disguise, and the warrior who cannot see the difference between a prize and a chain will carry both without ever questioning the weight. In the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi writes that you should not have any special fondness for a particular weapon, or anything else for that matter. Too much is the same as not enough. Musashi was not speaking in abstraction. He was speaking from decades of combat, from watching men die because their attachment to a specific technique made them predictable. In the financial arena, the same death happens. The warrior who must maintain a certain image, who cannot adapt, who has built a life so expensive that a single bad quarter becomes an existential crisis, that warrior is not free. That warrior is owned. And the most dangerous part? They look successful from the outside. The golden armor blinds everyone in the room, including the person wearing it. That clarity right there, the moment you recognize yourself in this, that is where real change begins. Drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. Something about knowing another warrior is sitting somewhere in the world, reading the same diagnosis at the same moment, makes the work feel less solitary. Where in the world are you? There is a scroll in Japanese military history that rarely makes it into popular conversation. It concerns Naomasa, one of the 4 great generals under Tokugawa Ieyasu, known across the Sengoku period as the Red Devil. Naomasa and his elite soldiers wore brilliant red lacquered armor into battle, the entire battalion drenched in red from helmet to heel. It was terrifying, it was unforgettable, and it made every one of them a priority target. The red armor announced, "Here is someone worth killing." The visual statement of power was simultaneously a declaration of vulnerability. Naomasa understood this. He did not wear the red armor because he was naive to the risk. He wore it because the psychological impact on the enemy was calculated to be worth the cost, and because his discipline, his unit cohesion, and his tactical preparation were so extraordinary that he could absorb the targeting. The armor was a deliberate strategic decision made from a position of total readiness. Most people today wear golden armor, luxury cars, enormous mortgaged houses, designer appearances, without Naomasa's preparation. They accept the targeting without the training, invite the arrows without building the shield, and want the intimidation without having done the work that makes the intimidation legitimate. Like the video if this wisdom is landing. It costs nothing, and it keeps this knowledge reaching more warriors who need it. Here is the anatomy of what golden armor actually costs in the modern field. The expensive car is not just a monthly payment, it is the premium insurance, the specialized maintenance, the depreciation that strips value the moment the key turns in the ignition. The oversized house is not just a mortgage, it is the property tax that scales with the facade value, the utilities that multiply per square foot, the pressure to furnish and maintain a space built more for impression than for living. These are not isolated expenses but ecosystems of cost, each one breeding the next, each requiring a higher income just to stay in place. You are not building a life, you are feeding a machine. Miyamoto Musashi wrote in the Book of 5 Rings, "Do not seek to possess either goods or fiefs for your old age." This was Rule 18 in his 21 precepts of the Dokodo, the way of walking alone. Not a vague philosophical musing, but a precise, practical warning from a man who had fought over 60 duels without a single defeat. He had seen what the accumulation of possessions did to a warrior's mind. It created fear where there should be freedom, hesitation where there should be decisive action. The man guarding treasure cannot charge forward because his eyes are not on the road ahead. They are permanently fixed on what he might lose. Now consider the tax structure that rewards display. In most jurisdictions, a high income earned and immediately consumed on lifestyle carries the heaviest tax burden. Earnings go in, the state takes its portion, and what remains is spent on depreciating assets. The system was not designed to trap you, but it will if you let it. Debt stacked on debt to maintain a status-based life is not financial progress. It is a slow surrender to the battlefield's most patient enemy, compound interest working against you instead of for you. Every month you carry high-interest debt to maintain appearances, you are paying your enemy a salary. The samurai tradition distinguishes sharply between offense and defense. Earning is attack. Keeping is defense. And every great strategist across every era of Japanese warfare understood that a commander who mastered only offense would eventually lose, because the armies that endured were not always the ones who conquered the most. They were the ones who protected what they had with the same ferocity they used to acquire it. Apply this to your financial life with clinical precision. Every hour you spend increasing your income is an offensive move, but every system you build to ensure that income does not immediately leave, automated savings, pre-commitment mechanisms, a lifestyle that costs less than you earn, that is your defensive formation. Most people in the high-income trap are brilliant at attack and completely exposed on defense. They generate significant resources and then stand in an open field with no walls and no moat, wondering why nothing accumulates because the attack was excellent and the defense never existed. Here is what that looks like in practice. A professional earning a strong salary with no automated savings structure ends the month in nearly the same position as someone earning a fraction of that amount. The numbers on paper look completely different, but both accounts are drained, both warriors are vulnerable, and a single unexpected expense would push either of them into crisis. The gap between their incomes is enormous. The gap between their actual financial security is almost invisible. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, wrote one of the most precise financial sentences in all of philosophical literature. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more. Seneca was not romanticizing poverty. He was diagnosing the mechanism. The craving itself is the poverty. The man who earns a great deal and still feels scarcity, still feels the urgent pull toward the next upgrade, the next signal of arrival. That man is poor in the only way that ultimately matters. He does not know when enough is enough, which means the finish line keeps moving, which means he is always running and never arriving, winning one race only to immediately set a longer one. This is where zanshin enters the frame. In Japanese martial arts, zanshin translates roughly as remaining mind or continuing awareness. After a strike is landed, after a battle seems finished, the warrior does not relax, the posture does not drop, the eyes remain open, the mind stays present and scanning. Zanshin is not paranoia. It is continuous, calm, disciplined awareness of the full field even after apparent victory. In personal finance, zanshin means never assuming your position is safe simply because this month's income was strong, never looking away from the lifestyle creep, the subtle cost escalations, the invisible habits draining resources while your attention is fixed elsewhere. The warrior with zanshin does not get ambushed, not by an enemy, and not by his own spending patterns. He sees the slow erosion before it becomes a collapse. There is a concept known quietly among those who study serious long-term financial strategy: stealth wealth. It is not a modern invention. It is a very old discipline. The warrior who displays nothing, invites no challenge, moves through the world with a freedom that the visibly wealthy cannot access, carries no target on his back and no social contract demanding he spend more than he should, simply to remain credible in the eyes of people whose opinions cost him money. Locking your lifestyle, deliberately capping it below your means and refusing to let it inflate with every income increase, is the financial equivalent of a warrior choosing plain armor. Not because he lacks resources for better, but because plain armor is faster, quieter, and costs less to replace when the battle turns. The warrior with the plain armor is not lesser. He is tactical, and he is free to move in ways the warrior draped in gold cannot even attempt. Try this. The next time your income increases, allocate the increase before you experience it. Move it to a separate account, an investment vehicle, an automated system that captures the gain before your lifestyle can absorb it. This is not deprivation. This is the defense formation set before the attack even lands, the wall built before the enemy arrives rather than scrambled together while arrows are already in the air. Yagyu Jubei, the legendary swordsman and strategist of the Yagyu Shinkage school, was known for a principle embedded in his school's deepest teachings: the sword that cannot be seen cannot be blocked. The Yagyu school layered its teachings in code deliberately, protecting its most powerful concepts from those who had not yet earned the understanding to use them correctly. The financial translation is direct. Invisible capital cannot be targeted, cannot be envied, cannot be seized by circumstance or social pressure. The warrior's greatest resources were always the ones no one knew existed, because silence is its own form of armor. Automating your defenses is the practical implementation of this principle. Automatic investment contributions that move before you see the paycheck, spending rules established in calm moments rather than during the emotional pull of a purchase decision, a lifestyle budget built not around what you earn, but around what you have decided your life genuinely requires. The distinction between what you want and what you need feels philosophical until the market drops, until the contract ends, until the unexpected expense arrives. And at that moment, the warrior with automated defenses stands firm, while the warrior who is spending everything begins to fracture, not because of bad luck, but because of the absence of systems built in advance. One prepared. One assumed the income would always arrive. Musashi's precept 14 from the Dokudo is rarely quoted. Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. Not a suggestion, a strategic order. Every possession that no longer serves you is weight, and weight slows the warrior, costs money to maintain, insure, store, and protect. The lean portfolio compounds more efficiently than the bloated one, and stripping the non-essential is not minimalism as aesthetics, but combat readiness applied to capital. Every layer removed a layer that no longer costs you, taxes you, or ties you to a version of yourself you have already outgrown. Muso Soseki was a 14th century Zen master, traditional garden designer, and advisor to both emperors and shoguns. He was offered great wealth and declined. He was offered political power and redirected it, not from weakness, not from lack of options, but from a precise understanding that attachment to superficial glory creates a permanent internal war. The mind that must constantly defend its status cannot rest. The mind that has released the need for external validation operates from a completely different position, calmer and clearer, more capable of seeing the full field without the distortion that ego creates. Soseki's gardens were not designed for display. They were designed to teach the viewer how to see. Space was not empty. Space was deliberate. What was not built was as intentional as what was. A stone placed in an open expanse of raked gravel, not as decoration, but as a lesson in proportion, in contrast, in the power of restraint. That is the financial principle made visible. What you choose not to spend is as strategic as what you choose to invest. And the discipline of the empty space is what gives the placed stone its meaning. Here is the code. The high-income trap prevents most people from ever reading. True financial freedom is not a number. It is a ratio, the distance between what your life costs and what your resources generate. A warrior earning a great deal and spending it all lives in perpetual financial combat, always fighting and never free. A warrior earning a moderate amount and spending considerably less builds, month by month, a gap that eventually becomes independence, because the gap is the freedom, not the income, not the title, not the car in the parking space or the square footage of the property. The gap is the only thing that actually sets you free. The warrior path is not about earning less. It is about escaping the trap where more earning simply funds more obligation, which means auditing every expense against a single honest question. Does this serve my actual life? Or does this serve the version of my life I perform for others? Every answer that reveals performance is a cut you can make. Every cut builds the gap, and every gap compounds until it begins to work harder than you do. And that is the moment the warrior stops fighting for survival and starts commanding from a position of genuine strength. This is where the unseen sword becomes your greatest asset. The capital you accumulate quietly, the lifestyle you lock deliberately, the ego you refuse to let sit in the driver's seat, these are the foundations of something that outlasts every status signal, every luxury item, every income spike, a financial life that is genuinely yours, and that no market correction, no social shift, no sudden change in circumstances can take from you in a single blow. You built it in silence. You protected it with discipline, and it belongs entirely to you. That is the warrior's ultimate position, not the loudest in the room, not the most visibly prosperous, but the one who could walk away from all of it and still be standing, still resourced, still free. If this path resonates with you, stay on it with us. Subscribe to Katana Wealth. The next lesson in this warrior series will push the principle further, because the fight for real financial freedom is not finished in one lesson, and it never is. The warrior who stops sharpening the blade is the warrior who has already lost.